Hello, I'm Warren Morningstar, and welcome to a special edition of AOPA Live this week. Joining me right now is Craig Fuller, and Craig, you have something to tell AOPA members in the general aviation world.
Well, thanks, Warren. We're making a statement today that is about me, which is a little unusual. I first began having discussions with the AOPA Board of Trustees in 2007. I was selected for this position in 2008. And at the time, they said they hoped I would commit to 5 years in the position. This is year 5. We have lots of challenges, but we have a wonderful team. We've done some restructuring. We've got great support from our trustees for what we're doing. So a couple of weeks ago, I shared with the board and our chairman, Bill Trimble, that I thought this should be my last year here at AOPA as president. I joined this general aviation community over 40 years ago as a private pilot. I've been an AOPA member nearly that entire time, and I have thoroughly enjoyed the time here. I have a very high regard for the colleagues, the people I work with. Probably the toughest part of making a decision like this is knowing that at some point I'll have to step away from you and our colleagues. The board is going to conduct a search. There's not an immediate successor. The board asked me to stay involved in running the organization, stay involved in helping with the search, and stay involved with the transition. So I'm not going anywhere, but having made this decision, thought it was the right time, thought it would give the board the time to find a successor, and I will find new challenges. I know I'm kind of looking forward to that, but for the time being, I'm here and at work.
Well, it's been a remarkable 5 years. What are some of the things that you're most proud of that you've accomplished in the 5 years that you've been here?
You know, first of all, when you come into an organization like AOPA, you're building on the strengths of an organization. You're building on the commitment of past presidents, the commitment of the board. We certainly faced with the new administration some very serious challenges, and advocacy is kind of job one around here, if you will, making sure we preserve the freedom to fly. And I think the strength of our organization in Washington, working with the largest caucuses in the Congress, the General Aviation Caucus in the House and in the Senate, has been something that a future leader can build on here. I think that's something that was new. The caucus never existed before, and I think that's important.
Well, and I think that is something that you can take a huge amount of credit for, is building our presence in Washington and making us even bigger than we ever were before.
Well, it's been a team effort, and I think part of that team means that we used our strength and our size and collaborated with others. And so really the strength of the general aviation force in Washington, D.C. comes from the fact that the general aviation community has been really tightly knit, held together as we faced issues, and we've got issues to face today. The other area I guess I'd turn to is our media channels. The founders of AOPA wanted an organization that was going to share this passion for flying with aviators and non-aviators alike. We have the strongest magazine publications out there. We have the strongest electronic newsletters and media out there. And then with your leadership, I mean that sincerely, with your leadership, we've built this AOPA Live channel that now reaches literally around the world. And I'm very proud that this was something we were able to work on together. I think it completed, if you will, the channels that we can effectively reach our members on and reach others interested in aviation. As you know, tens of thousands of people watch AOPA Live this week and learn about what we're doing. So there's many other things, and you know, honestly, there'll be a time for telling these stories, but I'm very focused on the tasks at hand. I do think I want to also say that being able to travel the country, being able to get to know so many people who are so committed to general aviation has been a real plus. It taught me the importance of our building what is kind of the third leg, if you will, the Center to Advance the Pilot Community, a place where we are putting all of our efforts at retaining people in flight training, helping to develop flying clubs, and then finding ways to keep people flying. That was something that didn't exist, but I do believe it's absolutely essential to the future of general aviation, and I'm proud to have seen that develop over the last few years.
Well, in addition to your leadership efforts in reaching out and trying to grow the pilot population, you've also made some changes to put AOPA on a stronger financial footing.
Well, that's true. It, of course, comes at a time when the economy has been very challenging for everyone. We took a look at what we needed to do to make sure we had a strong and sound financial platform here at AOPA, and realized that some of the traditional flows of revenue were going to be diminished and possibly diminished for a long period of time. We also realized that we've been involved in commercial activities, honestly, since the 1940s in one way or another. And so we've now housed that activity in what we call AOPA Holdings. Found a fine person to lead that in Michael Skarzinski. He's given us the chance to strengthen our flight planning offerings with FlyQ. I might add FlyQ Pocket, FlyQ EFB, and now FlyQ Flight Planner on the web as a very powerful system that you use any one of them and all of them are updated. There are some other areas that we're focused on. We've been involved in aircraft finance for some period of time, but we're going to have a stronger offering in that space. We're very committed to our aircraft insurance business. And then, we have a few things coming. In fact, I'm not going to sit still. I'll tell you that we're very excited, and we'll be talking more as we get closer to Sun and Fun about the AOPA store and some of the things people are going to find in there too. So there's some more to come. The concept here is making things available to our members that have value, but that also can provide some additional revenue flow to AOPA so that we can do the advocacy work and the communications work we do.
Well, Craig, it has been a real pleasure and a real privilege to work with you for these 5 years. And I know that all of us at AOPA and all of our members wish you the best of luck and success in the future.
Well, Warren, thank you very much. And you're going to have me around for a few more weeks and months, but we'll continue to celebrate our success and work hard to make sure we've got success to celebrate.
Thank you, Craig. Sure. And now the regular edition of AOPA Live this week begins right now. Coming up, what will sequestration mean to you? Our team of experts tells us what to expect. Bad news for Diamond. It's tax season. We'll tell you where to find information especially for pilots. Rod Machado tells you to taxi aggressively. And talk about aggressive flying with Top Gun. AOPA Live this week begins in just a moment. As we record this, we're less than 24 hours away from lots of things starting to shut down, including airport control towers. The dreaded sequester is about to hit. Hello, everyone, and welcome to AOPA Live this week. I'm Warren Morningstar. Tom Haynes is on assignment. Well, come March 1st, federal agencies have to whack some $85 billion out of their budgets if Congress and the White House can't reach some kind of deal, and the chances look pretty slim of that happening.
I've never seen the relationships in Washington among House leaders, Senate leaders, and a White House so dysfunctional. I've just never seen the inability for the leadership to be able to actually solve problems.
That was Craig speaking last weekend at the Northwest Aviation Conference, and nothing has changed in the last 5 days. But what did change a week ago was that the administration suddenly rolled out the big guns to tell us the sky was about to fall.
After telling us for weeks and weeks and weeks, this will not happen, we have no plans we can discuss, we don't really think we're going to have to do this, somebody flipped a switch in the communications department and said, let's go make this look as bad as possible. And
sequester will be it will have a very serious impact on the transportation services that are critical to the traveling public and to the nation's economy. Over $600 million of these cuts will need to come from the Federal Aviation Administration, the agency that controls and manages our nation's skies. As a result of these cuts, the vast majority of FAA's nearly 47,000 employees will be furloughed for approximately 1 day per pay period until the end of the fiscal year, and in some cases it could be as many as 2 days. So we are beginning today discussions with our unions to likely close more than 100 air traffic control towers at airports with fewer than 150,000 flight operations per year. And we're talking about places like Boca Raton, Florida, Joplin, Missouri, Hilton Head, South Carolina, and San Marcos, Texas.
But what you really want to know is how cutting $600 million out of the FAA for the rest of the fiscal year is going to affect your flying today and tomorrow and the months thereafter. So we put the specific questions to FAA and DOT officials this week. AOPA Senior Vice President of Government Affairs, Melissa Rudinger, joins me now. And Melissa, I understand that the disproportionate share of the cuts are going to affect general aviation?
From an operational perspective, yes, Warren, we believe that's true. We had a meeting with FAA officials yesterday, and they announced that they would be closing 189 contract air traffic control towers and 49 federal towers at primarily general aviation airports.
Mm-hmm. What about, will this affect things like flight service? Does that get into the Lockheed Martin contract?
It does not at this point. Now, we have to remember, sequestration is not just a one-time cut. Sequestration, if it's not, if we don't alter the plan, it will play out over 10 years. And so the cuts will continue and get deeper and deeper as we go through that 10-year period. And so a program like flight service, DUAT, any of the programs that serve general aviation certainly could be under the gun under that scenario.
Okay, for a general aviation pilot, am I going to see anything next week?
There will not be an immediate impact. We call it a ratcheting down, a ramp, but if sequestration takes effect, which it looks like it will, on March 1st, the FAA will need at least 30 days to notify employees that are going to be furloughed or towers that are going to be closed. So the impacts will start to take effect beginning in April. And you'll see that ratchet up or ratchet down, depending on how you look at it, as we move through April, May, and June, if there isn't any kind of resolution. And those facilities will all be closed, and we will feel impacts.
Mm-hmm. Now, I also understand that they're talking about not repairing certain nav aids.
Yes, just as troubling under sequestration, if we go into a full sequestration. The FAA will maintain a minimum network of VORs. So as long as a VOR continues to operate, fine. But if it has a service issue, goes out of service for some reason, they're mechanical structures, so anything can happen. If a VOR has an outage and it's not part of this minimum network, it will not be restored for service, which means the VOR goes down. The procedures that are associated with that VOR will be notamed out of service, and that would be a very significant impact. The FAA also has a plan to maintain 77 critical facilities. So there are 77 critical facilities and their associated nav aids that are excluded from that plan. Those are in locations where we have heavy traffic, so major metropolitan areas, mm-hmm. areas with major traffic with the airlines be feeling.
Okay, how about something like GPS and WAAS?
Well, GPS and WAAS, the GPS and WAAS system should continue to function. However, the implementation of NextGen, the ADS-B infrastructure, and all the other things that are associated with NextGen, under sequestration, those activities would cease for the year.
Okay, why did the FAA pick things like contract towers? I mean, when you look at it, $600 million out of a $16 billion budget, they ought to be able to find that in paper clips.
Well, you would think that, and actually they've cut back on supplies. But with sequestration this year, they need to find, the FAA is required to find cuts to this year's budget, fiscal year 2013. We're already well into the fiscal year. And so the FAA looked at the top 100 programs and contracts, and contract towers was the largest contract program, and which is one of the reasons it was targeted. The ability to implement the sequestration in 2013, they have that ability with the contract tower program. They don't necessarily have that ability with other programs. And so unfortunately, that was a place that they looked. They are also looking at furloughing every single air traffic employee, every single FAA employee, 2 days a month. So one day every pay period. And that will also have an impact, obviously, on operations and the ability of the FAA to efficiently manage airspace.
Well, not only operations, but that's going to affect things like certification too, I would think.
Absolutely. We don't know yet what the impacts to certification will be, but clearly we have a certification system that's already strained, and it would probably bring many certification activities to a halt, and that means that could have serious impacts even getting your medical and all sorts of things that we do and take for granted that the FAA does on a daily basis.
Thanks, Melissa. Well, you may be wondering if there's anything that you can do about all of this.
People say, well, what should we do? Well, we really, I think, should call upon our elected officials to get to the table and work this out. If that's what they're elected to do, that's what their responsibility is.
And if all of that isn't enough, the entire government might shut down after March 27th. That's because the so-called continuing resolution will expire, and the government will run out of money unless, wait for it, Congress acts. Well, while the government is taking away, we at AOPA would like to give you something useful and free. The latest addition to the AOPA FlyQ family is now available. FlyQ Web is our new online flight planner. It puts more tools and upgraded features at your fingertips. It's designed to help you fly smarter.
The third member of the FlyQ family is something called FlyQ Web, and that allows you to do truly rich flight planning, wind-optimized, fantastic flight planning. And what's great about the family between FlyQ Pocket, FlyQ EFB, and FlyQ Web is that all the aircraft performance that you customize, your pilot performance, and everything to do with your flight plans are all automatically synchronized. You don't have to shuffle things between or retype things. It's all magically there for you.
Seattle Avionics powers the mobile apps in the FlyQ family. The service is free for AOPA members. You can find it right now on aopa.org under the Flight Planning tab. Coming up, Rod Machado says, show that airplane who's boss on the taxiway. And we talk with one of the F-14 pilots from the movie Top Gun. You're watching AOPA Live this week. Welcome back. You're watching AOPA Live this week. Well, as we mentioned at the top of the show, last weekend AOPA attended the Northwest Aviation Conference outside of Seattle. Now, we try to attend a lot of these regional events so that we can brief you on what's going on in general aviation and with AOPA, but much more importantly, so we can listen to what's on your mind. More than half of Craig Fuller's keynote address was devoted to questions from the audience, and AOPA staff met one-on-one with pilots at our booth. Well, AOPA has 6 regional managers stationed around the country to help us stay on top of the issues. We talked with Northwest Mountain Regional Manager Dave Ulane about some aviation tax issues pending in the Washington State Legislature.
One of the biggest ones we're working on right now is supporting an initiative that would reallocate 90% of the aircraft excise taxes collected in Washington State back to the Aeronautics Division. Presently, that 90% goes to the state's general fund, not to support aviation in the state. We're working to change that. That would result in about $500,000 of additional funding for aviation in Washington State every 2 years.
And while in the Northwest, we happened upon a former owner of the AOPA Sweepstakes, Debonair.
Hate to see it go because it was a great airplane and the family loved it, and it just now it's surprising to see it's going to be rebuilt and given away in your sweepstakes here next year. So, well, I think whomever wins it is going to really enjoy the airplane, and I hope they have as much fun with it.
Steve bought the Debonair in 1978 when he moved to California from Alaska. He had it about 2 years and then moved to Idaho, and he traded the Debonair for a Cessna 182 because he thought the Cessna was a better backcountry airplane. Well, usually you don't want to be overly aggressive flying your airplane, but in this License to Learn, Rod Machado tells us it's okay to be aggressive on the taxiway.
I'd like to talk to you about something that you might not be doing aggressively enough at the airport. And no, I don't mean your kung fu either. Besides, I don't really think that's kung fu. Instead, I'm talking about how you lean the mixture during taxi to prevent spark plug fouling. Come with me. We typically lean the mixture during taxi to prevent spark plug fouling. And of course, this doesn't harm the engine because the engine doesn't develop a lot of power during taxi. However, you would not want to lean the mixture or have it lean when you're developing more than 70% power, because fuel has a tremendous cooling effect on cylinder head temperatures. So the question is, how do you lean the mixture properly during taxi? Well, let's hop inside my Cessna 150 freighter and find out. Most folks lean the mixture by rotating the knob or pulling the knob out, about an inch or so. And that typically works just fine and keeps the plugs from fouling during taxi. The problem, however, is when you forget to enrichen the mixture in preparation for takeoff. You see, airplane fuel systems have something known as a power enrichment valve. This valve automatically increases the fuel flowing into the engine by somewhere around 15% when the throttle is moved forward to the takeoff position. Now suppose you leaned the mixture for taxi, but forgot to enrichen it for takeoff. Well, you might just find that your cylinder head temperatures now closely approximate the internal temperatures of the sun. Okay, maybe not that high, but you get the point, right? Under the right conditions, these temperatures are conducive to detonation. So here's how to prevent this from happening. Lean the mixture until the engine stumbles at idle. And then enrichen it enough so that the engine can develop all the thrust the airplane needs for taxi. Now, you'll not only prevent the plugs from fouling, but you'll also prevent yourself from taking off with an excessively lean mixture. For example, if I try to apply takeoff power, the engine will stumble, reminding me that I must enrichen the mixture to the appropriate setting for takeoff. This is what is known as aggressive leaning during taxi. So there you have it, a nice check and balance to help prevent taking off with the mixture leaned when it's not appropriate to do so. So always remember to check your POH for proper procedures, and never run with sharp objects, never stare directly at the sun, and close cover before striking. I'm Rod Machado for AOPA Live.
Thanks, Rod. Another good tip. Well, it's not just the U.S. government that's in a tight spot this week. There's bad news for Diamond Aircraft Industries Canada. The company is, quote, restructuring its London, Ontario plant because of low sales of piston aircraft. Now, what that really means is that Diamond will stop building aircraft in North America and will also stop work on the D-Jet program. The majority of the workforce has been furloughed. A small staff is still there to fill parts orders and provide continuing airworthiness and technical support. And a setback for the Beechcraft Corporation. Once again, the Air Force has selected Embraer's A-29 Super Tucano instead of the Beechcraft AT-6 for its light air support program. The Super Tucano will be used to provide light air support, reconnaissance, and training to the Afghan military. The Air Force had previously awarded the contract to Embraer and its U.S. partner Sierra Nevada Corporation. Beechcraft challenged that, saying the bidding process had been flawed. The Air Force reworked the process and again selected the Super Tucano. The A-29 Super Tucano will be built in Jacksonville, Florida at Embraer's U.S. facility. And yes, it's tax season, and if you're a pilot or an aircraft owner, you may have special circumstances to consider when you file. We've worked to provide you with information on the subject. Head to AOPA.org where you'll find the Pilot's Guide to Taxes. The publication has recently been reviewed by author, pilot, attorney, and CPA, boy that's a lot, Ray Speciale for the 2012 tax year. Ray updated the sections on the hobby loss rule and on aircraft depreciation to reflect changes in the tax code. Well, that may be helpful to you as you work with your tax professional to prepare your IRS documents. Well, when we come back, we'll fly with Top Gun.
I've got my eye in the northern bogey. Roger, I got the southern guy.
So you're the one.
Yes, ma'am. Watch the birdie. Firing.
Welcome back. You're watching AOPA Live this week. If you think of flying movies, well, Top Gun has got to be near the top of the list for most exciting. And it's making a comeback by being released on Blu-ray. AOPA Live's Paul Harrop talked with one of the 4 pilots for the film about the experience of shooting it.
know the music. You know the airplane. You know every single line of the movie Top Gun.
I feel the need for speed.
And you know Tom Cruise is not actually flying that Tomcat.
Hollywood, we're losing Viper. Let's just stay on Jester.
But did you ever think about who was?
Well, it was a lot of fun, first of all.
A wide range.
Before Scott Altman flew shuttle missions into space,
Columbia Commander Scott Altman looking out of the overhead windows.
He was a 26-year-old naval aviator stationed at Miramar, California.
We had just gotten back from a 7.5-month cruise in the Indian Ocean and just outside the Persian Gulf. We came back. We heard Paramount was in town getting ready to make a movie, and I was one of the guys lucky enough to get selected to be part of the core team doing the filming on the movie.
He says shooting the movie let him do things that every young fighter jock always wanted to.
But you got a chance to do some pretty fun flying out over the desert and over the ocean in some of the different scenes with some great people.
Not to mention getting to buzz the tower and keep your wings. Tell me about that scene. I'm sure that was incredible fun to shoot.
You know, it's one of those things. They come in and you're like, okay, if I just had thought at some time, hey, we had a great day today, let's go home and buzz the tower. When you landed, there'd be a guy there to laser your wings right off your shoulder because they don't put up with that kind of stuff at all. But because it was a movie, they got approval for some certain things and they said, okay, Scott, we need you to buzz the tower. I was like, all right, that sounds good. And then they said, because it's for the movies, we need you to do it 9 times to make sure we get a good take.
And that wasn't the only iconic scene Scott became a part of.
Then they had me fly straight and level so they could get a close-up shot of me and be able to see things like fingers.
And yes, that's his finger maintaining diplomatic relations with the fictional MiG-28.
Watch the birdie. Jeez, I cracked myself up.
Altman has a share in a bonanza and still enjoys flying as much as he can. He says that's the thrill that still rings true in the film that defined a generation.
Flying is so fun, and it's reflected. The excitement, the tension, the drama of air combat maneuvering is all there in the movie. And I just think it has resonated with people at a very core level in a way that some people don't expect.
Paul Hero, AOPA Live.
We're giving away 2 copies of Top Gun on Blu-ray. Head over to the AOPA Facebook page for details on how to win. And finally this week, we remember an American hero. Major Tom Griffin passed away on Tuesday evening. He was one of 5 remaining Tokyo Doolittle Raiders. You'll remember that they flew 16 B-25 Mitchell bombers off the USS Hornet to bomb Japan in 1942. Griffin served as the navigator on Crew 9. After the raid, he served in North Africa, where he was shot down by the Germans and spent years as a POW. AOPA Live talked with Griffin at the 70th Annual Doolittle Raiders Reunion on Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. He said they never feared.
Did you think you were not going to make it back? I mean, particularly when you had to launch so early?
Oh, you don't know. You don't worry about that. You worry about figuring a way to get out of that. Of course, when we were out there, we didn't at first think we had enough gas. We were simply going to ditch next to the first ship we saw, and they'd take us aboard. Friendly ship, we'd sail off with them. Unfriendly, we all had 45s, we'd take it over. Those were the best plans we could make then.
There are 4 remaining Raiders. In April, they will gather for the very last time. Raider officials tell us Griffin passed peacefully, surrounded by his family. Tom Griffin was 96 years old. Well, that's it for this week. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next Thursday with coverage from the Heli Expo in Las Vegas. In honor of the Raiders, we leave you today with video from the 70th Doolittle's Raiders reunion.
Every Thursday,
we're working to get you answers.
The most experienced reporters in general aviation,
bringing you more details as they develop.
The stories that affect you.
We talk with our own safety expert.
Every Thursday, AOPA Live this week.